I'm about to try and do something that hasn't been done since Jarno Opmeer in 2021. Set a sub 1 minute lap time without cheating, so no more corner cutting, no more wall riding, and definitely no more exceeding track limits. So of course this cannot be done with the normal F1 24 car, so I've upgraded this F1 World car all the way from the base level 100 to the maxed out tech level 1000. However, I have one problem. 2024 F1 cars are a lot slower than they were in 2021, and I'm recording this intro before I've even driven a lap yet, so honestly I've got no idea if this challenge is even possible. So unsurprisingly, my first lap was just so far off the pace. If you've ever driven with a level 1000 F1 World car or maxed out My Team car, you know how difficult these are to drive. I mean, just have a look at this. But that's absolutely fine, as it is only Q1 and I have a lot of time left to improve, so we're going to go through this lap pretty quickly as it was a disaster. Anyway, it's now time for the second braking corner on this track, and I broke so early, I really didn't want to risk anything. However, on the exit of the corner, the car just could not deal with any sort of traction. So that's definitely something that I've got to fix on the setup. So next up is turn 4, and once again it's a very similar story. I broke at the right time, but traction was just absolutely horrible. Moving on, we'll quickly speed up to the final 2 corners of this lap, and in the meantime I got past a random AI car which held me back a little, and now it's time for the penultimate corner of this lap. To be fair, I actually took turn 9 pretty well, and now it's time for the final corner where I was just so committed, which as you can see was a mistake. However, I felt like with a few setup tweaks that can be fixed straight away, and as we crossed the finish line I was just over 11 seconds away from the sub 1 minute lap time. So even though 11 seconds is a lot, I was not worried because I knew that there was a lot of time to find in this lap, specifically in turn 1, and because I had enough battery to go for another lap, that's exactly what I was going to do. Anyway, that's enough of my waffle. Even though I had a cautious run going through turn 1, I gained a massive 4.5 seconds. And as we speed up through the rest of this second improvement, my delta fluctuated around above 4 to 5 seconds, and by the time we crossed the finish line I had kept this gain to pretty much exactly what it was leaving turn 1. So I was now just 6.65 seconds away from the overall goal. And to be completely honest with you, I was just very happy that I didn't have any absolutely massive mistakes on this lap and the car was finally becoming more drivable. So I've skipped halfway into the next improvement because as you can see, coming into the double left-hander I've made no progress on this lap so far, and obviously I'm not going to waste your time. So next up is turn 6, and going through this corner I brought the delta back to equal, and through turn 7 I took it so much better than I had on my previous personal best, and by the time we get to the final 2 corners this would have gained me a massive 8 temps worth of progress. However, as you can see, coming into these final 2 corners I have a car in the way, and you can probably tell that I'm being held up so badly by them, which was just so annoying. This is because I definitely could have gained more time going through them, but that would have to wait for future improvements because this lap brought me within 6 seconds of the sub 1 minute lap time. So you might have seen that on the last lap leaving turn 4 I had a massive snap which cost me loads of time, so on this lap I was desperate to make up for it. And luckily for me that's exactly what I did, because as we speed this lap up I was now a second up to the delta, which is a sixth of the progress that I needed to complete this challenge. Right, so before we go through the final corner, I'm just going to stop the footage here, and as you can see, I'm 9 temps up, which is going to rise on the exit, but I'm also about to do something so stupid. So as we resume the footage, for some unknown reason to me, I just completely forgot to steer, and this lost me a potential half a second worth of progress, and I was just so annoyed. But I was also determined to make up for this before the end of Q1. And with just a minute and a half left in this session, we're coming into the final 2 corners just under a tenth of a second up, and I knew that this was now time to make up for my previous error. So going through turn 9, I gained around half a tenth, but now it's time for the final corner, so I knew that I had to make this count, and that's exactly what I did. So on the previous improvement I said that I thought the mistake was worth around half a second, however I was so wrong, as on this lap I gained another full second. And for my final improvement in Q1 I was now under 4.5 seconds away from the sub 1 minute lap time. Okay, so it's now time for Q2, and as you can see by the lack of delta I'm only setting a banker lap. So going into turn 9 I've gone up the inside of an AI car, so there's definitely time to find there, and after this was the final corner where initially I thought that I'd nailed it. However, I had a massive snap of understeer on the exit, which meant that I had to very carefully rejoin the track to not invalidate, and I had a massive lift off the throttle which lost me so much time, and I set a lap time that was around a second down on my previous personal best. And by the time we get to the same point on the next lap, I was just under 4 temps up. First up was turn 9, and I took it really well. I was now 6 temps positive to the delta, and this was so crucial for my progress in this challenge. And for the first time, I took this final corner absolutely perfectly, and between the final corner and the finish line, I gained 7 more temps worth of progress, and I was now under 3 seconds away from the overall goal. And as you can tell, I was pretty pleased with this. So starting the lap on my previous personal best, I obviously had a horrible exit out of the final corner, so on this lap, even before the first corner, I was already a tenth and a half off. start. Going through turn 1, I set myself up for such a good exit, which was perfect because as we speed up to turn 3, I've already gained another 4/10 of a second. Coming into turn 3, I knew that there was time to find, and I had an unbelievable run through this corner. I broke at exactly the right point and had fantastic traction, which brought me to over a second up, which is also a quarter of a second over what I needed for the sub 1 minute lap time. So it's now time for the double left-hander. First up was turn 6, and going through this corner once again I absolutely nailed it, which meant that I was now 1.3 seconds up. And next up was turn 7, where I maintained this gain eventually all the way till the end of the lap. And for the first time in this challenge, I was under 2.5 seconds away from the overall goal. So it's now time for the final lap of Q2. Coming into turn 1, I was already a 10th up, and honestly throughout the entirety of this challenge I did not have a better turn 1. This is because I took the entry so much better than an already good turn 1 on my previous personal best, and my exit was also brilliant, which meant that coming into turn 3 I was over 3/10 up. Going through this corner I knew that it would be so difficult to gain any time, so when I looked up at the delta on the exit, genuinely I was just so happy that I had maintained my gain, and I was certain that there was time to find in turn 5. And at this point in the challenge I was carrying so much momentum because once again I had such a good corner, and I gained another 2/10 of a second, which would be so difficult to maintain in the double left-hander. But not as difficult as it should have been because I was way too eager in turn 6, which cost me 3/10, but thankfully on the exit of turn 7 I got back 2 of the 3/10 that I had lost with 2 corners to go. Turn 9 nailed it. I was back up to over 6/10 up, but so frustratingly I missed the apex of the final corner, which ended up losing me a 10.5 worth of progress. But to be honest, I was not massively worried because I set this lap on medium tyres and I was now under 2 seconds away from the sub 1 minute lap time. Okay, so it's now time for Q3, and although I used medium tyres for my previous personal best, 2 seconds is a lot of time to find. So between these sessions I was editing some footage, and you've probably already noticed this, but I stink at the F1 game. At the end of every hot lap that I was doing, I was finishing with almost 60% of my battery left. So after some research I found out that the hot lap ERS mode doesn't use all of the battery with a normal F1 24 car on a hot lap, let alone a level 1000 F1 world car. So as we now go into this Q3 session, I knew that more improvements were going to be inevitable, however I wasn't aware of how much progress that I was about to make. Okay, so a bit of backstory to this lap. I've just set a banker lap without the overtake ERS mode, so we're going to see how much of a difference using the overtake mode is about to make. As you can see by the delta, I didn't even have that good of a run through turn 1, however I put the overtake on as quick as possible, and by the time we get to turn 3 I'm already a 10th up. But to improve I need to make at least 8/10 worth of progress. Through turn 3, and to be fair I absolutely nailed this corner. Perfect rotation and a perfect exit, and you can see the difference in terms of the delta. Because I was now 6/10 up, and by the time we get to turn 4 I was 1/10 away from making permanent progress. And in turn 4 I found more than just 1/10, because even though I had a slight snap I got brilliant traction once again, and I was now comfortably over a second up, which is 2/10 more than my Q2 personal best. However, now it's time for turn 6, and as you can see there is a car ahead of me on a cooldown lap, which was so bad because I turned in way too late to try and avoid it. And this cost me 2.5 but we have to move on because it is time for turn 7, and thankfully I nailed it. Which as we speed up to the penultimate corner I was now 1.1 seconds up, and going through turn 9 thankfully nothing changed. But so frustratingly, going through the final corner I took the wrong line and I tried to make up for it on traction, which as you can tell definitely didn't work. But that's okay because as I crossed the line I was now under 1.6 seconds away from the sub 1 minute lap time, and I think it's fair to say that there is a lot of time to find. And we're now at the end of this Q3 session, coming into turn 1 where I knew that I could make even more progress. To be honest, I definitely could have gained even more time going through there, but anyway, I was now just over half a 10th up, and we're actually going to speed up all the way to turn 6 because all of the progress that I made up to this point was just from EOS. But it's now time for the proper progress through the corners. This time going through turn 6 nobody was in my way, and I had a brilliant run, and thankfully I was now half a second up. Sadly I could not quite maintain this gain going through turn 7, however I was not too worried about this because I knew how much time I could find in the final corner as long as I didn't mess it up. First up was going through turn 9, nothing changed, however through the final corner everything changed compared to my previous personal best because I could not have taken this corner any better. And in the end I finished this lap with a huge 7/10 worth of progress, and for the first time in this challenge I was now under a second away from the overall goal. And a few failed Q3 sessions later I've just set a banker lap 3/10 off my personal best, and I didn't know how good of a lap I was about to have. Through turn 1 on my previous lap I had a howler, but this time I had an unbelievable run, genuinely the best I had in this entire challenge, and I was now half a second up. And overall this would be 2/10 worth of progress to my current personal best lap time. Now it's time for turn 3, and to be honest I didn't even take it that well, but at this point who cares because I've just gained another half a 10. And we're actually going to speed up all the way to turn 6 because I've managed to maintain this gain, and at this rate I was looking to be under half a second away from the sub 1 minute lap time. Turn 6 and 7 completed it, mate. I took these corners just absolutely brilliantly, and leaving this mini section of corners I was over 8.5 up, and this could be it. If I nail these final 2 corners I can complete this challenge. However, going through turn 9 I had such a bad run. I missed the apex by a mile, which was going to cost me so much time, and I had to nail this final corner. To be fair, I did nail the final corner, but I did did not do quite enough to complete the challenge, but I still made huge progress and I was now so delighted because I was only 4.5 attempts away from the overall goal. However, sadly, after this, I could just not quite make any improvements, and well, this was just so annoying. I was always around just over a second off the pace, and I knew that something needed changing. So part of the reason that I felt like I wasn't making any progress at this point in the challenge was that I was just cycling through Q3 sessions, and well, it was just so boring having to wait 12 minutes for the optimum grip in this session. So I now had a new plan. I was just going to cycle through one-shot qualies where I would just have optimum grip as a permanent feature, which was going to be so useful. And another benefit that I did not know about at this point was that every one-shot quali you would start with 100% battery, and this would make a massive difference in terms of lap time. And it was all now just down to me. If I really wanted to set this sub 1 minute lap time, I would have to drive one of the best laps that I've ever driven on any F1 game. I had done it. After about 300 run-throughs of one-shot qualies, I completed the sub 1 minute lap time challenge without cheating by 46 thousandths of a second. And honestly, I'm putting it all down to those final 2 corners because I absolutely nailed them. Thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe as I'm desperately trying to hit 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'll see you all next week.